In the tiny, dimly lit room, the muffled sounds of crowds, cheer, and the occasional roller coaster reached your ears while you wiped the sweat from your brow. The heat in the room had already caused you to remove your outer garments and loosen a few items of clothing, if only to relieve yourself, trapped in the middle of a ride inside a funhouse. Taishiro almost encircled around your form in the box due to his height and size. You practically pushed your back against the sliding doors behind you to make yourself as small as possible for him to have room.
How long do you think they'll have this up and running?
You asked, fanning your face with your hand.
Not sure,
replied Taishiro, his arms outstretched and pushed against the ceiling of the small elevator you were both trapped in.
But we'll be fine.
Easier said than done. Now in the peak of summer, you decided to visit an old friend after everything that occurred in the Shie Hasakai incident. Hearing it all over the news was almost a shock to the system, if not for his well-being, but for those younger heroes involved as well. The travel from Osaka didn't take too long for you, and once the hospital had allowed visitors, you immediately greeted the BNHA hero, chuckling at the state he was in, wrapped in all the bandages. It wasn't often that you would see him in his skinny state the way it was. In fact, sometimes it was uncanny. The greetings and conversations were filled with old memories, high school reminiscence, and internship madness, until you offered a day of fun, treats, and all the food he could eat to get him back to his original form in no time. Once he was admitted out of the hospital, of course. And so here you were, trapped in a small elevator inside the resident funhouse of the theme park with the tallest man you've ever known, and probably would know, in your lifetime. The space didn't do well to cater to his size, his legs bent around you and his arms held against the ceiling. He practically hunched in the space before the both of you heard the mechanics of the ride suddenly stop. The fluorescent lights switched to a dim red hue, signaling some form of malfunction. It had been 10 minutes.
Are you sure you're alright?
You asked Taishiro, looking up at his tall form crouching in the space.
I could shift.
I'll be alright.
He responded with his cheery grin.
I'd get us out, but
Destruction of public property?
You questioned. Taishiro sighed with a smile and a shrug of his shoulders. That smile was infectious. He was such a positive human being to be around you couldn't help but smile back, still continuing to fan yourself in the heat generating inside. Not only did the elevator malfunction, but so did the air conditioning vents created to help ventilate and cool the funhouse. During this summer heat, it was unavoidable. You spotted Taishiro's body shift as he began to remove his large jumper, pulling the piece of clothing over his head and carefully dropping it on the floor. His undershirt stuck to him, revealing the muscles that would have been hidden underneath his original form. You watched as he still stayed in position, attempting to give you as much room inside as much as you were trying to give to him.
You know, there's enough room for you to sit in here if it helps.
You suggested, taking note of the space his legs hovered over.
I could, but then,
His voice trailed as he looked down at you with a quirked brow.
You're gonna have to,
He didn't look you in the eye, and you couldn't tell in the dim red light how his expression was painted on his face. You figured he was just concerned about how much space you would have to accommodate for him.
I don't mind,
you reassured.
We've been in worse situations back home. I'd rather you be comfortable than having to be in this awkward position for who knows how long.
A low chuckle rumbled in Taishiro's throat while he slowly lowered himself onto the floor, bending his legs to accommodate his size. His back sat flushed against the back of the elevator while you followed suit, pulling your legs against your chest and making yourself as small as possible. Taishiro practically engulfed the elevator. Sometimes you've forgotten how tall he really was. After all, it had been a handful of years since you've spent time with the hero in person. The occasional phone call and email was all you could do to keep the friendship present. The sound of creaking interrupted your thoughts as both Taishiro and yourself looked towards the ceiling, the sounds echoing outside, while the box you both sat in shook only minutely.
Sounds like they're close to fixing it,
commented Taishiro, now fanning himself with his large hand. The heat was becoming a little unbearable, feeling your hair stick to your face from the sweat on your brow. You decided to pull out your stash, twisting your hand behind your back and pulling out 2 popsicles out of thin air, tossing one straight to Taishiro, who immediately grabbed it by reflex.
Huh? How did you sneak these in here?
He asked.
Toyo, I'm offended,
you replied, teasingly.
You remember my quirk, right? How else were you able to have extra snacks on school trips? And besides, this was my idea to get you out and fatten you up so you could get back to work faster. Had to be prepared.
You happily took a bite out from your popsicle while Taishiro did the same. The chill was a relief from the growing humidity, but it was only temporary, as you both licked what was left of the popsicle sticks. Not long after, you reached your arm through the invisible space behind you, pulling out a bento box wrapped in red cloth. Taishiro stared at you, his eyebrows quirked in what you knew was both curiosity and slight disappointment.
I know you said not to worry and leave it, but who knew how long we'd be having fun in a funhouse?
You chirped. Taishiro chuckled, holding his large hand out to receive the box from you. It was the only thing he brought to this outing, his favorite meal wrapped up to keep warm during the day. At the time, when Taishiro planned to leave it with the rest of your belongings at the funhouse's gates, you snuck it in, knowing that the lunch hour was looming, and, well, you did promise a day of food and fun. Taishiro carefully opened the red cloth and the bento lid, revealing rows of takoyaki, delicately prepared in the box. You immediately pulled out 2 small bamboo skewers, handing one to him. Eventually, the both of you partook in the contents of the box.
Thanks.
Murmured Taishiro through his mouthfuls of takoyaki.
I was starting to feel a little peckish.
No problem,
you replied before taking a bite of a small piece yourself.
At least we could enjoy ourselves this way. Remember that one time when we were out in the woods and we totally strayed off the trail?
Yeah, Teach was so mad, he had to ask one of the guys to sniff us down. Literally.
Taishiro's laugh boomed inside the small elevator box, remembering old times that the both of you had caused some mischief.
And you were riding on my back eventually.
Well, I can carry things, but it still feels like a backpack out of nowhere,
you retorted.
I was tired! Sue me!
I still remember asking if you could hide me behind your back.
I still remember when I actually tried,
you grimaced.
Let's not get into that.
The both of you laughed together, while still going through the takoyaki that was still left in the box, enjoying your lunch while the echoes of the elevator shaft still bounced around you. The box shifted every once in a while, causing the both of you to turn your attention to the state of affairs at hand, in case if, well, the worst could happen. However, Taishiro offered to be the safety net, just in case. A blush crept on your cheeks after his suggestion, realizing that he wasn't in his plush form as of yet, and that all you would feel if he embraced you was his finely tuned muscles. You shook your head of the thought. He was an old school friend. It had been years. Eventually, all of the takoyaki had been eaten, and satisfied, you brought the box back behind you as it disappeared out of nowhere. The sound of whirring caught your ear as a waft of air rushed into the box, giving you a sense of relief from the heat inside. Taishiro sighed happily, still fanning himself but feeling the air rush past his face.
Much better,
he murmured.
At least we're not gonna sweat to death.
You chuckled at his statement, enjoying the cool sensation of the air conditioning unit finally up and running. But still, the elevator did not budge. You doing okay? You asked, catching the blonde's attention from his surroundings. I mean, I dragged you out here after what you've gone through. How are your little mini heroes doing?
They're not many, he corrected. But I heard that they've recovered well. It's best that they recoup at UA for a bit before they return to continuing their work-study internships.
I second that motion,
you replied with a smile.
They looked really beat up, at least from what the media was able to show. Couldn't believe that you were taking in little ones under your wing.
It's no different to you, right? Looking after future heroes.
Your expression changed to slight befuddlement at Taishiro's questions, before you chuckled.
Now that's, an understatement.
You responded with a nervous chuckle. You were a mere babysitter at a daycare center back in Osaka, looking after children of local heroes who were on patrol. In a way, you were serving public servants of the state, but you did have your hands full with the number of quirks and the variety that walked through the door.
Ah, come on,
coaxed Taishiro.
You had heaps of practice looking after each one of us back at school.
You specifically,
you interjected, eyeing the BMI hero with a smirk.
I had to prep so much food, or storage for food, so I could carry it around with you.
You didn't object to it,
he commented with a wide grin.
And I remember some fellow classmates outside of our class thought I was using you as a pack mule.
You watched as his grin faltered a little, looking away from you what seemed to be slight shame. Back in school, Taishiro was always a positive force, but it didn't come without its drawbacks. You remembered those moments, when other students who didn't quite understand Taishiro saw him for only his size and nothing more, watching every interaction of his as just mere gain in relation to it. He also remembered a few students coming up to you, bothering to ask mundane questions about him and your friendship. High school was a trying time sometimes, but you saw Taishiro for his charm, his personality, and most importantly, his humor. At times. Despite what form he took, he was always a beam of sunshine. You immediately placed your hand on top of his shin without thought, catching his attention from his own thoughts.
That was back then.
You spoke with a warm tone.
This is now. Teenagers can be scary sometimes, but I'm glad you found a couple who are actually sweet. Well, I can guess that from how they look. Never really met them.
Hey, if you're staying in Musatafu for a while, I could introduce you to him,
suggested Taishiro.
I'm sure you'll like him, just as much as I see so much in him.
You couldn't help but smile at the beaming positivity that radiated from Taishiro, before your body shivered slightly. The air conditioning worked, but it worked too well. You immediately grabbed for your outer garments again to wrap it around you, still holding a nervous smile.
Now it's...
You spoke. trying to still your body from the shiver that ran through it. Taishiro turned to his jumper, grabbing it before he immediately slipped it over your head, causing you to panic.
Huh? What? Toyo!
It wasn't long until his large jumper engulfed you, your arms now in its large arms.
Better?
He asked, his face close to yours. The shiver you felt earlier had all but magically disappeared. Instead, you felt your neck flush and your cheeks began to burn at how close he was. Thank goodness for the dim red light in the elevator that hopefully masked your reaction to his movements.
Yeah, a lot better,
you murmured, trying to hide your face in his large jumper. Suddenly, you felt his large hand atop your head, patting it gently.
I miss you, traveler.
He spoke gently, his beaming grin now a soft smile on his face.
It's great to see you here, and I miss having long conversations with you.
Yeah, same,
you quietly murmured, still hiding your face in his jumper. His scent still lingered along the brim. It made your lips curl in a smile, even though it was hidden from Taishiro's view.
How long did you say you were staying here for?
He asked out of curiosity.
Maybe a week?
You suggested.
I'd have to contact the daycare center, but they did say it was fine.
Great. How about after this I treat you to something here? Show you around, get to know the city a bit.
Taishiro offered, his hand still atop your head and his grin returning to his face. Oh, that smile. It was the most comforting thing to have ever seen, and it only made you feel giddy at the sight, reminiscing about how it helped you get through high school despite all of the back chatter and talk that teenagers do. You peered up from underneath Taishiro's large hand, reaching your hands above to grasp at his palm, even though you were swallowed by his jumper.
I'd like that,
you answered with a chirp.
I hope you show me the best places for souvenirs. Most of the kids back home want a piece of Musatafa, home of heroes.
Chuckles erupted from both of your throats, until the whirring of the elevator interrupted your thoughts, causing the box to jolt a little before it started to move. It was a relief to know that everything was back to working order, until that sudden jolt turned into an abrupt halt, the doors of the elevator suddenly opening behind you. The problem was that you had been leaning against the doors the whole time the both of you were trapped inside. Your back gave way as you fell backwards out of the elevator from the surprise and the shock. Taishiro immediately lunged forward, wrapping one of his large arms around you and pulling you to his chest, using his other arm to prop himself up from the ground. You felt yourself pressed against his chest, feeling his warmth through his jumper and the beating of his heart against you. You were weightless, lifted from the ground that you would have inevitably crashed onto if not for Taishiro's quick reflexes. Taishiro looked around to find no one present on the floor the elevator transported the both of you to in the funhouse. He turned to find you curled in his chest, smiling.
You okay?
He asked, now spotting the faint pink that dusted your cheeks from the sudden movement.
I'm fine,
you chirped nervously, trying to right yourself from his arms and crawling onto the floor, his jumper funnily trailing behind you.
No harm, no foul.
Your pitch didn't disguise your nervousness, causing the tall blonde to laugh as he finally stood to his feet, stretching his limbs.
Well, you can hold on to my jumper if you want,
he offered.
I don't think I'll be needing it for the time being.
You looked down at yourself to find that the jumper actually swallowed you whole, attempting to try and tie the extra long fabric to the side to keep it from dragging behind you.
You sure?
You asked incredulously, shrugging with the fabric hanging by your shoulders. He smiled as he placed his large hand atop your head again.
You look kinda cute.
he murmured with a cheeky smirk, a glimpse of it disappearing before his smile returned. Whatever pink was fading from your cheeks returned in a bloom while you tied the loose fabric of his jumper against your form. He peeked up at Taishiro again, and that smile was ever present. No matter what tribulations the both of you went through, you knew deep down that the moments you shared with Taishiro could never be overshadowed by the burdens that came with it. The thought still stayed with you through the rest of the funhouse trip. And it wasn't long until the both of you found your way to the food markets in the theme park.